About a year ago, I shared a vision with our CBMW staff team, and we were just all together just for our planning retreat, and I shared a vision about the honor of God. And I explained to them how everything that we need to do at CBMW needs to be anchored in doing it for the honor of God. So every tweet, blog post, podcast, every event that we do at CBMW, we want it to leverage God's honor, not our own platform. We don't want to be doing things to be vindicated right on these issues. We want to do it for the honor of God. And so when we were planning this conference, Owen asked me to share that same vision with you. So in 15 minutes, I'm going to try and explain what it is, what it means to honor God, how we honor God, why we honor God, and 3 complementarian implications. So 15 minutes, Executive Director, I'm going to try and set a precedent here for these talks. Let's go, all right? First, the what. What does it mean to honor God? Turn to 1 Samuel 2:30. 1 Samuel 2:30. The context for this passage is that God is removing the mantle of leadership from Eli, the prophet. And he says this, "Therefore the Lord of God of Israel declares, I promise that your house and the house of your father should go in and out before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me, for those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me shall be lightly esteemed." Maybe your household was like this growing up, but my mom picked every single movie that we watched, every single TV show. So since her version of sports was watching a Scott Hamilton ice skating special, and her version of a good movie was Anne of Green Gables, that basically meant that I was out of luck, right? Well, one time I go over to my neighbor's house in Dallas, Mark Gibson, and he has this awesome movie called Pride of the Yankees. Maybe you've seen it before. It's Babe Ruth, Luke Gehrig. So I see this movie. I get all into the Yankees. I'm asking to go to the library, check out books on the Yankees. So about this time, my mom says, "Hey, Grant, I got a movie for you this Friday night. It's called The Story of Ruth." And so my 10-year-old self says, finally, my mom's getting on board with what I want to watch. She's rented a biographical movie about the Babe, about Babe Ruth. So Friday night, I pop my popcorn, invite some friends over. We're going to watch the Babe. And we turn on the movie, and all it is this scene from a Palestinian desert. And it doesn't click with me at first. I'm like, I didn't know that Babe Ruth was from an immigrant family. His story is even more compelling now. And then there's a couple people walking across in Bible clothes, and then the narrator says, "In the land of Moab." And then it clicks. My mom has done it again. Well, one time she finally has kind of figured out that I'm not into this stuff, and she rents this incredible movie, maybe you've seen it, called Chariots of Fire. And one of the things that you realize in this movie, it's about these Olympic runners on the 1924 British Olympic team, is that one runner, Eric Liddell, based on a true story, is compelled by something that none of the other runners seem to grasp. And he's compelled by the honor of God. And so his family was a Presbyterian mission family, and there's this one scene in the movie, he and his sister are walking along in the Scottish Highlands, and she goes, "Eric, why don't you just give up running and come over to China and assume the mission?" And he says, "Jane, I was made for a purpose. I was made for China. But God also made me fast. And when I run, I feel His pleasure. And to run and to win is to honor Him. And to not run would be to hold Him in contempt." And many of you know the story on the way over to Paris. That's where the Olympic Games were. He finds out that the qualifying heats for the 100-meter dash are on a Sunday. He says, "I'm not going to run." They slide him into the 400-meter dash, an unheard of switch. You don't just go from the 100 to the 400. And he runs the 400, wins Olympic gold, sets a new world record in 45 seconds in the process. And this isn't like on these nice tracks. This is cinder tracks. So just an incredible feat. Well, anyway, in the movie, he's at the blocks, and an American runner hands him a note, and he quotes this verse, 1 Samuel 2:30. It says, "In the old book, he who honors me, I will honor." To understand this verse, we have to understand what this word honor means. The Hebrew word is kabod, which literally means heavy or weightiness. Now, we are not now American honor shame culture, But in the Far East, they understand this. And they literally show this when they meet somebody, because what does somebody in an Eastern culture do? They bow, literally showing the heaviness or weightiness of that person that they're meeting on their life. And so, biblically speaking, this is what it means to honor God. It means acting both privately and publicly in such a way that the character of God and the glory of God are the heaviest and weightiest realities in your life. The character of God, who God is, and the glory of God, His attributes, are the heaviest realities in your life. Now, just in terms of this text, it's incredible, because what does God say? Those who honor me, God says, I will honor. Those people will be heavy upon my heart. And then the opposite is terrifyingly true, that those who dishonor God will be lightly esteemed by God. Frightening. And by the way, the New Testament places a premium on honoring God as well. Paul in Romans 1 says, for although they knew God, they did not honor Him as God and give thanks to Him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Fascinatingly, Peter, talking about, I believe, the fulfillment of 1 Samuel 2:30, says that God honors all Christians, not because we've honored God, but because Christ honored God for us. In 1 Peter 3:7, he says, so the honor is for those who believe. That's the fulfillment. But we as believers, Paul says in Ephesians 4:1, are called to walk in a manner worthy of our calling. We are called to honor God, not because we're trying to earn God's honoring of us, but because He already has in Christ Jesus. And so that's the narrative in the New Testament. Well, how this picks up in the book of Samuel is, I believe, you see in the narratives of the Ark of the Covenant, in David and Goliath, you see over and over again this theme of honoring God. So what I'd like to do now is show you the how and the why, quickly from 1 Samuel 17. How and why David honors God in his confrontation with Goliath, okay? So if you turn over quickly, I'm just going to read a couple verses and then get out and do the three complementarian implications. So first, the how in 1 Samuel 17. David shows us how to honor God over and against the army of Israel, listen to this, by seeing God above all earthly realities. By seeing God above all earthly realities. I mean, that makes sense, right? If you're going to feel the heaviness and the weightiness of God's character, you have to see who He is. And David sees God while the army of Israel doesn't. And so in the narrative, great pains is taken to show you this monstrosity that is Goliath. And his armor is described, it weighs over 100 pounds. He's got a huge weaver's beam. The end of it weighs 18 pounds. I don't know many guys that can throw something that weighs 18 pounds. And I'm not talking about, this isn't just close in. He's looking to tab somebody off at 40, 50 feet. One time when I checked into 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, the colonel said, hey, go get in PT gear, show up in the gym, you're going to box a guy. And so I show up in the gym, and there's this guy over in the corner kind of doing this Rocky dance. And this guy is a cross between Mike Tyson and one of those Monstars from Space Jam. He's ready to go. And I go 2 rounds with this guy, and I'm just trying not to get a rib broken. Goliath is like that. He is a warrior of warriors. And the thing is he is all the army of Israel sees. They don't see the God who brought them into the land, the God who took them through the Red Sea, delivered them from the army of Pharaoh, the God who tore down the walls of Jericho. All they see in front of them throughout this conflict is Goliath. So notice verse 11. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. No God. No God. And then notice this emphasis on sight, how they don't see God, but all they see is the Philistine in verse 24. Verse 24, all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, Goliath. They fled from him and they were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel." To which David says, "Have you seen my God who will deliver us?" David sees this whole thing for what it is, about the honor of God. Notice what he says in 26. "And David said to the men who stood by him, 'What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel?'" You see it? Reproach. That's the opposite of honor. Reproach and shame, opposite of honor. He sees it for what it is. Goliath is dishonoring God. And Saul, the Lord's anointed, who is supposed to stand for the honor of God, is dismayed and greatly afraid. Now, the why. Why is David motivated to honor God? David honors God because he has a bold confidence that God will honor his own name. God will honor his own name, and nothing's going to stop that. Paul says, Philippians 2, that at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow on heaven and earth and under the earth, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That's going to happen. Nobody can stop that. That's a reality. Jesus Christ's name will be honored. So the question is, like the captain of the army of the Lord when Joshua came over the Jordan River, isn't whether God's on our team, but it's if we're on God's team. Because this is what God is going to do. And David knows this. You see it in verse 36 when he's talking to Saul. He says, "Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them." Why? "For he has defied the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." He knows where the battle is. He knows who's going to win this thing. Then in verse 45, David said to the Philistine, "You came to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I came to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I will give you the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand." In short, David faces this giant not relying on his own slingshot skills like I saw in some National Geographic special. He is relying on God's willingness to vindicate his own name. Now, 3 quick complementarian implications. Complementarians, I believe, have an incredible opportunity right now, at this point in history, to honor God. Because the battle is waging on these points. The battle is waging on what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what is marriage, what are the roles within marriage, and what is sexual identity. This is where the battle is raging. And so to see the battle for what it is right now is an incredible opportunity for all of us to step out and honor God. 2, we should strive to see God in biblical complementarity. Strive to see the character of God in biblical complementarity. What do I mean by that? When Adam was created in the garden, God says something very important. He says, "There is not a helper suitable for him, and it's not good for man to be alone." One of the reasons I think God says that is because throughout all of eternity, God has been in a personal relationship with the Trinity. That there has been infinite love within the Godhead between the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And there's been infinite companionship. And so when God says it's not good that man be alone and that he needs a companion, he's speaking because he's a personal God. And so marriage, the most intimate relationship on planet Earth, is meant to point us to the fact that our God is personal, that our God enters into relationship. Secondly, Paul says in Ephesians 5 that this does not end in itself, that it points to the very gospel of Jesus Christ, to Christ laying down his life and serving the church. It's meant to show us the love of God. And so this isn't just, we believe this because this is how it orders our house. This is meant to reveal God to us. And when we see God in it, we'll be like David and see God over the landscape of the cultural challenges we're facing. Third and finally, we must realize that God is moving to honor his own name on this earth, and it will be honored. Listen, the marriage supper of the Lamb is the fulfillment of biblical complementarity. When Christ comes back to bring back his church, it will be the fulfillment of which all that we're talking about points to. And Christ's name will be honored in it. And so when we get on board with what Christ is doing in biblical complementarity, we are on board with God in the mission of God to honor his own name. Thank you.